All right. Does everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica Corda. I'm from the Tech Collective, and we're the IT Association for the state of Rhode Island. We're pleased to have you here for Power Automate. Let's build some flows and get stuff done. Many of you joined us 2 weeks ago where Catherine Thenault gave us a really high-level overview as to what this tool could do, and it looked very easy. But today she's really going to give us some details of the how-to and some applications that are fairly common and hopefully helpful to everyone of what they can do with this very powerful tool. Catherine comes to us from APSO, and she is a trainer extraordinaire, especially from what we saw last week. This is something she is extremely passionate about, and I believe it will show in her presentation today. So just so you know, I will post in the conversation a 1-question survey. I'd ask if you would please just fill that out. It really helps us to know if we filled what you were looking for today. And certainly we encourage you to look at our website for upcoming training opportunities as well as info sessions such as these. So Catherine, we're going to do a Q&A at the end of the session. Yes. So
yeah, feel free to post in chat, and if we don't get to all your questions at the end, if you have questions in there, I will reach out to you if we have your email addresses at the Tech Collective. I'll be happy to do that. We'll also be sharing the recording and my slides, so you don't have to write down everything on the slides. They'll be coming to you, although most of this will be demo. Feel free to try and log into Power Automate and follow along. Then you can always refer to the recording if you want to, catch some of the steps. And you can reach me at any of those credentials I put up there, any of those ways. Feel free to reach out, link in with me, follow me on Twitter. And so today what we're going to do is walk through the creation of 3 cloud flows. And we're going to learn about what this dynamic content is and how to use it. We'll understand permissions for one type of flow. And we're going to look at how we test and review the run results as we go along. Power Automate is the workflow builder in the Microsoft Power Platform. And, this is a, group of tools that are for business users. You do not need to be an IT professional. Some of the key concepts that I covered 2 weeks ago in detail, I just want to refresh the terminology. Connectors are those services and applications that Power Automate leverages. We'll be mostly using SharePoint and Outlook today, but we'll also use a few others that I'll point out. And there's over 400 connectors that you can leverage. A connection is how do you access that connector? What account do you use? And I'll show you where you see that and what maybe some of the options for doing that are. Triggers are what starts a flow. How does it get started? And we'll be looking at 3 different triggers today. And the actions are what those connectors can do. The conditions are different action paths that can be taken. And templates are a bunch of pre-built flows that you can leverage to save yourself a ton of work. And today we will leverage 2 templates, and then we'll build one of our flows from scratch. So we'll get both of those experiences. There were 5 types of flows. I'm focused on the ones that are sort of free and part of a normal Office 365 license. And those are all cloud flows. And the differences are how they're triggered. And so we're going to look at 3 different types. The automated is triggered automatically when something happens. And so what will trigger ours is when a particular type of email comes in. And we're going to save this email into a particular folder. So in this situation, I'm going to look for emails that say invoice in the subject line and have attachments. And I'm going to save those attachments in a folder. Instant is sort of on demand. You decide when you want to run it. And you can request it, say, on a SharePoint list item, but you could also do it on something else, but we'll be doing it on that. And then scheduled is, I want this thing to run on a daily basis or a weekly basis or monthly basis. I want some type of a report sent to me, pulling information from my Office 365 system. So let's dig into the first one. As I said, we're going to look at the trigger to be an email coming in that has an attachment with the word invoice in the subject, and we're going to save it into a OneDrive folder called invoices. So we're going to start up here in Power Automate. We get to it through the waffle, and we look for the little blue arrow, the Power Automate, and that will land us in our Power Automate homepage. And we are going to leverage templates, and I'm going to just click in templates because that's a great place to search. And even though the one I want right here is right available to me, I'm just going to type in attachments to see what is available. And so we can see that there's all sorts of templates available for email attachments. We can save them to Google Drive, to Dropbox, to, so to these other connectors that are not necessarily Office 365. But we want to save them to our personal OneDrive. And so, or our OneDrive for Business folder. So we're going to choose that template. And once we choose it, we get into a sort of page where we're going to see how to, kick this off. It's going to tell us what are the connectors that are available to us. We'll see that Outlook is the trigger, that it's going to leverage OneDrive for Business, and that there's going to be a delay activity in here. Down here is where we see the connection information. We see that we're going to connect to Outlook as our ID, and the little green check mark shows that it's a valid connection, that we're logged in and that everything is okay. If you have red here, you may want to, try either switching an account or logging in if you use multiple accounts, or making sure you're logged in. And we're going to create the flow. Once we click Create Flow, the flow has been created for us. Usually, the first thing I will do is looking at this landing page for the flow. We'll see the details of the flow. We can see the run history. We can see the connections, and we can see the owner, which is the person who created it. We can add owners if we want and share the flow with other people. But one of the first things I usually do is I usually rename this. And so I'm going to rename it to Save Invoices. And, come on. And then I'm going to put in a description in case I do share it with someone. And basically, it's going to save email attachments when the subject contains invoice into the OneDrive invoices folder. So, and the reason it's really good to rename these when you're using templates is otherwise you end up with a whole bunch that have the same name. So you want something that's a little more descriptive. Now what happens is we can go in and edit the flow and customize it the way we want it. And this is showing that what happens is on a new email into our inbox, I'm going to look at the advanced options, and it's already been pre-configured to filter our emails that include attachments. We want to add a filter that says we want to look for emails that have the word invoice in the subject, because we know that the invoices coming in from people, we've asked people who send us invoices to always put the word invoice in the subject. And then we come into this little loop that says apply to each attachment on the email. Now, sometimes emails have one attachment, but sometimes they have more. And Power Automate is intelligent enough to know that there might be more. So it is got this little loop that says for every attachments on the email, we're going to take these steps. Now, I'm going to, what it's going to do is for each attachment, it's going to create a file, and then it's going to check to see if the file was created correctly. And if it wasn't, it's going to try and recreate the file. I'm going to just zoom in on this a little bit more in the create file. So the template is saying it wants to create the file in our OneDrive in a folder called Email Attachments from Power Automate. And if I go over to my OneDrive, I can see that because I've created this flow before, that this folder exists. But I want to store one in a folder called Invoices, and that folder doesn't exist. But I'm going to just type in Invoices here, and it is going to create this automatically for us. It's very nice and helpful that way. Now, it's going to create a file. You need two things as part of the file. You need the file name and the file content. What this template has been pre-populated with is it has taken the attachment name and the attachment content values and already put them in here for us. And I want to show you how it gets that. So over here in this dynamic content, we have a list of lots of stuff that is available from information from above. Here we can see this gray bar that says on new email corresponds to information that comes out of this action, or this trigger actually. And this is all the fields that we can leverage out of that, action. So this was pre-populated with the attachment's name. So we can say, oh, that's great, but we can also customize it if we want. Maybe we always want to say we want, even though it's in the invoices folder, we want to put invoice in it. Or we could get very fancy and put, date stamps or other things on it. Or maybe the name of the person it came from. And then the attachments content, we have to leave that the way it is. So then in our condition, we can see that it's doing a test for us, and it's too small to see in here, even if I zoom in. But if you hover over these little functions, you can actually see what's going on, and you can see that it's checking to see if the file creation status code is an error code. So if it's an error, what's going to happen is it's going to say, well, something must be wrong. We're going to wait a few seconds, and then we're going to try and recreate the file. So we need to make sure that this matches up with what we put above. So invoices, and we're going to make sure that is the same. So now we're going to save it, and I am going to test it. I'm going to send myself an email, and we're going to go out and look at it, and we're going to watch to see. I'm going to wait a few seconds because it takes a minute for the email to get here. I'll look in my inbox. Still hasn't come in. I'm just gonna, while we're waiting for that email to come in, I'm just gonna see, does anyone have any questions in the chat yet?
Yes, you have Tim Paul had asked, does the flow remember the template, or name of template that it was used to create?
Does the flow remember the, oh, yes, there is in here in the details, there is a link to the original template. Does that answer the question? And if you click on it, it will take you to it.
Yes, perfect, thanks.
All right, hopefully. Well, I am not sure what's going on with the delay in mail. This worked pretty quickly when I sent it before. And all right, I'm just going to try resending it. Oh, there it goes. Let's see, did that do it? No. I'm going to see. We're not seeing it run. I'm going to try resending the email.
Click on Other when you go back to your Outlook.
Let's see. I'm just going to attach another invoice. Here it is, and send it. There we go. And we'll come back and see this because I'm not sure what's wrong with the email. But it might take a few minutes to come on. But we'll take a look and see how this runs.
Click Other.
Oh, here it goes.
Yeah. Oh, it did.
So, all right. So now if I come into my flow and I refresh, I'm going to just refresh the all runs. It might take a minute to kick in. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm just going to say, sometimes it helps if you say test. Test. I'm going to just send that email one more time. And admin. Invoice. I'm putting the invoice in. I'm attaching it. Attaching the invoice. And sending it. There we go. All right, okay. Oh, and we can see now that the flow did run successfully. You can see that the test ran successfully. I have the little check mark, and those show that you can follow how it ran. And so this is really useful for debugging and seeing what's going on. If I come out here to my OneDrive, I can see that it created the folder for me, and then it put the invoice in, and it prepended it with invoice dash. So, so that flow worked great. All right, the next flow that we're going to build is an approval. And approvals are really useful in Power Automate. They can be triggered in a number of ways. You know, you can have them triggered automatically when a list item is created, or something else happens, a form is created, or a file is created or modified. But you might also want to wait and just say, I want to run this request for approval when I'm ready. And so that's the situation we're going to look at. I have a travel request list in an HR site, and we're going to go take a look at it. And we're going to come out to my human resources site. And I have a travel request list. And I may have started to fill out this request and realize I needed some additional information. Like, I don't know what the hotel costs will be. So I'm going to come in and edit my request. I'm requesting to go to a SharePoint conference in Las Vegas in May. I know the airfare is going to be $375, and the hotel I can put in the hotel that I'm going to stay at, and I'm going to estimate that it's going to be $1,400 and save it. And now that I've saved it, I want to kick off an approval request. So how we're going to build on that approval request. So we're going to go to templates, and we're going to search for approval on selected item. And it's going to bring up a few approvals. So we can request manager approval for a selected item. We could request an approval in Teams. We could request approval where everyone must approve. We could request an approval first to respond. So there's all sorts of different ones. In this case, we're going to actually have Power Automate look up the manager of the requester for us and then submit the request to the manager. So that's the one we want to use. When we come down here, we can see it's going to use access SharePoint using our credentials, Office 365 users, which is what it uses to look up the manager information. And then approvals, mail, and notifications, all are services within Power Automate ecosystem that run sort of as themselves. Sometimes you could use Outlook instead of mail. There's different connectors that you can use that will send mail. This one leverages this built-in mail connector. So I'm going to go ahead and say continue. It's going to build us one. Unlike the other one, it drops us right into the flow, but I'm still going to use the rename. I'm going to rename it from here, request manager approval for HR travel request, or manager approval. And then I'm going to come into the flow and start looking at where I might have to make choices. So the first thing I have to do is I have to say in this selected item SharePoint action or trigger, what site do I want to use? And I'm going to use this little show options list. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. And there are a bunch of sites that are available. If there's not the site you want, you can click on enter custom value and type the site that you're interested in using. But we have the HR site right here, so I'm going to choose that. Once you populate the site information, it will go out and pull back what lists are available. So there's the travel requests. Now, when you initiate an instant flow, you have the ability to ask the person initiating it for additional input. And so this template was configured for the initiator or requester to put in a message to the manager. So we like that, but we want some additional information. So we're going to ask for yes, no input. And what we want to know is, are others traveling? Or are others attending? And they can select yes or no. So that is two ways when they start the workflow, we can gather some additional information. So for a selected SharePoint item. Now, when you trigger on a SharePoint list, it gets some very basic information back, but we want to get lots more information from that list item. So we're actually going to go pull all the information by going and getting the item from that list. So again, we're just going to pick HR, we're going to pick the travel request, and it's smart enough to know that we want to get the SharePoint record or list item that was triggered in the triggering event. it's going to go get my profile, and then it's going to go get my manager based on my information. And so that we can use that manager in the approval process. Now, again, I love the templates because they have a bunch of built-in error checking sometimes that you wouldn't think of putting in on your own. So what this does is it's going to check and say, do I have a manager? And there's a little red arrow that indicates that there's an error that happens. And I don't even have to think about how to configure that or how to deal with that. But basically, if it can't find a manager it's going to send the requester, gee, there's no manager information. You can't run this approval flow. And then it will end the Power Automate flow. But in most circumstances, it should find your manager and you can start an approval. Now, there's a bunch of different approval types. There's approve, reject. Everyone must approve if you want to send it to multiple people. Approve, reject, first to respond. And then you can also make custom responses. What if you want something besides approve or reject? You have the ability to create custom responses. So maybe approve, reject, defer, or something else entirely. But we're going to go with the approve, reject. And then it has a lot of information pre-filled in, the approval request, who's it's being assigned to. It's being assigned to your manager. And then the details. Now here, it's assumed that you just want to put the message that you solicited at the time of the request. But we're actually going to go make it a little more interesting. We're going to say, let me just zoom out a little bit. So to get this dynamic content, and we want my profile, my display name, or the requester display name. Let me just do requester one more time. This is giving us all the fields that we can use in our to build the content. And we can filter on it if we know what we want. And these are the fields from the Get Manager action above us. Then there's fields from the Get My Profile action. And then there's fields from the Get Item. And then there's fields from the trigger. So we can go through all these, but it's quite annoying to zoom, go down through all of these. So as we become familiar with what the fields are named, we can type in to filter it. So we want my display name, the requester's display name, to appear. And so when you say requester, you'll notice there's claims, there's display name, there's email, there's lots of information about the requester. So I'm going to say requester display name. Let's see, did it put that in there? I'm zoomed over a little bit. So I'm going to build a message that says requester display name has requested travel to, and then I want to add in some destination information. So I'm going to say destination state. And I'm just going to zoom this over a little bit. And destination, let's see, destination city. And let's get me out of here. So destination city and the destination state are others are traveling, and we're going to put in the yes, no field that we solicited at the beginning, so that yes, no, are others traveling. And their message about this request message. So that's all great. we don't really have to do much else. This is all configured for us. There's a condition that says if the response is equal to approve, it's going to let me know it was approved. It's going to inform the requester of the approval. And if it was rejected, it's going to inform me. So we're going to save this. And then we're going to test it. And I am going to, there's no ability to test it here, so I'm actually going to have to go off and run it. So here I'm going to come out to my list. And the way you trigger an instant flow in this situation is you come into your SharePoint list, you look for automate, and you wait a few seconds. And I love live demos because things that take no time at all when you practice. This has been saved. Let's go back out here. Travel. Automate. Here we go. It shows up. Sometimes it takes a couple of seconds to show up. So now that our Power Automate flow is there, we can say seek manager approval. It's going to show that we have the right to run this by showing all our connections. We have green lights and all of that. I'm going to say continue. And this is where I have, you know, the ability to say, I think this is necessary for my goals. Are others traveling? Yes. And I'm going to go ahead and run flow. So that's where you can solicit that input when you start that instant flow. So now we can go back to here and we can go out and see what's happening. My flow is ready to go. We can see, in fact, it is running. We can click on it here and see that it's running. And we can see that where it is it's gone through the first 4 steps and it's waiting for something here. So it's probably waiting for approval. So I'm going to come into my manager's email and I can see that there's an approval that's come in. These come in through email. They can also come in if you have the Power Automate app on your phone. They can come in there. And you can see that we have our very nice customized email that my name has requested travel to a location. Others are traveling true. And I think this is necessary for my goals. And I'm going to say approve. And I'll say sounds great. And submit. And we're going to come back here and see that it has gone through and done a condition, and it's gone ahead and it's informed the requester of the approval. And in fact, if I come into my mailbox, I'll see that I have that it's approved my request. Now, one of the things that we might want to do is actually capture in the list the fact that it was approved and who approved or rejected it. So I actually have columns for this. So we can go tweak our flow to do that. I'm going to edit this flow and say, gee, I really want one more step to go update that SharePoint list item with some information. I don't want the flow to just tell me, but I want it to update the list item. So what we're going to do is come into our condition. And we're going to add an action. And we're going to update item. And we're going to update a SharePoint item. We're going to choose our human resources site. We're going to choose our travel requests. And we know that we want the ID that came in our original request. Any field that has a star, we want to populate with content that was there. So from the get item, we want to put the title in, and then what we want to do is to put in the sign off status approved, and we want to see who approved it or rejected it. And I think what we want to do is, I think if we put our manager display name, that will work. And then what we want is to do the same, very similar thing for the rejection. First, I'm going to rename this step to say to approved. And then I want to go recreate that update in the next, if it's rejected. So what I can do is I can copy this step to my clipboard, and then I can come over here and add an action, and I can actually copy it and paste it in basically from what I had done before. So I don't have to, recreate all that work. And I'm going to rename it to rejected. And I'm going to change this from approved to rejected. I'm going to save it. If I want to test this, I don't have to go back to the list. I can just say test automatically with a recently used trigger, and it's just going to basically reuse that. And this makes testing so simple. You do need to go in and have your manager reapprove it. It won't record what they did. It will have to go through that approval process again. So we'll wait for that approval to come in. Let's see, it says it's running. All right, and we're going to reject it, not with the surge or something like that, and submit it. And now we can see that it has finished, and it's gone through the rejection, and it should have updated our list item to show that it was rejected, and it will show it was rejected by my manager. So it updated the list with the information. So great. So that is the second flow I wanted to show you. And we made it better. One other thing I just want to show you quickly on that is in those types of flows that are instant, you're going to have an extra box over here called Run Only Users. And if you want people to run it besides yourself, you need to add them into this. And so you need to say add a group or individual users to be able to run it. And it's going to show that they're going to connect to SharePoint either as themselves, or you can have them connect as you. So here's a way where permissions need to really be thought through a little bit and configured. And that's really for the instant ones. You need to configure those runtime users. All right, our third scenario that we're going to do today is a scheduled flow that runs daily or weekly and filters back items from a list, but it could be from anywhere. But I'm going to use my SharePoint task list, and it's going to bring back items that aren't completed, and it'll build a table with certain columns and send an email with that table. So let's see. There isn't really a great template for this. And so I'm just going to start a new flow from blank on my own. And it's going to be a scheduled cloud flow. And we're going to say send event tasks report. And it's going to say, how frequently do you want to run this? And so I want to run this weekly on Tuesdays at what time? At 11 a.m. Because maybe I have a meeting in the afternoon, and so I want to check on the status. I'm going to create my flow. I'm going to come out to my task list out here. So I have a task list where I track all the tasks that have to happen for an event, adding sessions to the internet, adding students, removing session dates, evaluation stuff, facilities, program material development, and they all have a task status, and they all have due dates and who they've been assigned to. So what I want to do in my flow is I want to go get the items from that list. So I'm going to go get items. And so I want SharePoint get items. I want to go out to the site. I'm going to go choose the list. Sometimes the list name doesn't appear and you actually have to enter it, but it is here, training event task list. And then we're going to go do some configuration. We have the ability to filter the data, and you'll see here it says O data. And so this is a little bit tricky. It does give you some examples. It's the, here it's saying what's the name of the column equal to a value. So I happen to know that my column's name is task status, and I want it when it's not equal to completed. It's my understanding that Microsoft is planning to make this even easier to build out, where it will have three, like the conditions, where it will have three little boxes for you to fill in. But in the meantime, if you need to do this type of query, it's you can always Google filter query OData Power Automate and get some great resources. So the next thing I want to do is I want to just build an HTML table with those results. So there's a create HTML table, and I just want to pull in, I'm going to back out a little bit because I'm used to this view. And what I want is to get the values from the get item step, all the list of items from the get item step. Now I'm going to get to choose which columns I would like to add into my little report I want. And I know I want the title of the task. I know I want assigned to. I know I want the task status. Is it in progress? I know I want the due date. And I know I want the notes field. So I now am going to go into here and I'm going to look for title. And from get items, I see that the title field is available. I'm going to look for assigned. And I see that there's a bunch of values for assigned. There's the assigned to email, picture, department, job title, display name, claims, and assigned to. We want to put assigned to display name. We want their name, not their email, not anything else. For task status, we're going to look for task status. Now here, when we look for task status, we see there's task status and task status value. We almost always want to choose value. That's what, this ends up being a lot of code. We just want the value of that field. And then we want due date. And we want notes. So we're going to save it. Office 365 has slowed down a lot as we've gotten into the middle of the day. And now we can test it. And I'm just going to say manually test it, run the flow. And it's going to say that it ran successfully. So we can see that along each step, we have the little green check mark. It ran. Let's go to our mail and see what we got. And I'm just going to clean this stuff up from earlier while we wait for the report to come in. When I was testing this morning, it was going, let me just see, did I actually put in who to send it to? No, I didn't. I just created the table. I stopped one step, excuse me. So we're going to go edit it and actually send myself the email. Send an email to Catherine. The event tasks report. And then we're just going to dump in our table. And we're going to, as soon as that saves, start another test.
Catherine?
Yeah.
I just want to interject just to be aware of time. It's 12:49 now.
Okay.
So we're in the third go round, but just, I don't want folks to have to sign off and you to be like right at the end and this is what you need to press to make it happen.
All right, here we go. It's going to run and we're going to see it. And now here we come. So here we have our weekly task report. And that looks pretty great. I don't like the way the due date looks, and it's not in due date order. So I can make quickly 2 quick changes to that, and I'm going to do that. I'm just going to edit it. What I'm going to do is when I get the items, I'm going to order it by a field. And I'm going to order it by the due date field. And then the other thing I want to do is I'm going to format that date. And I'm going to build an expression. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I just want you to know that there is the ability to create expressions. It's a little more advanced and more programmy. But I just want you to be aware that, like, you have formulas in Excel, you have this ability to build expressions. And what I'm going to do is I want to format the date time to just include the month and day. And I'm going to update that and save it and test it. And while I'm waiting for it to save, I'm going to come back to my last slide, which is just to say, you know, so I've showed you 3 ways to build 3 different flows today. I do have some suggestions for additional resources to keep learning. These are available online. Power Automate in a Day is available from GitHub, and it is a full day of training of Power Automate that has all the resources you need and walk someone through a day of training. Ignite is Microsoft's premier training event, and that is online in March. Collab 365 has wonderful free events that you can attend. They usually have a pass that you can pay for that gives you access to their resources after the classes. It's fairly low cost. And then on the Power Automate, there's the Learn button and the question button that are very useful. And I'll just show you those as I go back, and hopefully we can see that my flow, I'm going to run that test one more time. And if you look here, there's a question mark up here that provides a lot of resources. And down on the bottom left, there's Learn. That also will take you to a lot of resources. So Microsoft has a lot of resources that are available. And here, if we look at our report, we can see that it's sorted in date order, and it has the due date formatted much more nicely. So with that, I'm going to see if there's any questions. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, we had one question earlier of what triggers the hourglass to prompt.
Oh, what triggers the hourglass to prompt? So you have that ability in a instant flow to you know, put in information, and it just let me just go back and show you that in that flow. In that flow that we built, the Seek Manager approval. I'm just going to, for a selected item, we have this ability to add input, and you can add any type of input field you want. So this flow came pre-configured with a text field, and then we added that yes, no field. So you can add any type of field that you want them to request. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, I guess we have a few minutes to spare. That was a really fast run through. The recording's available if people want to, walk through those steps again. But I hope it gives you a flavor, and I tried to give you some insight into some of the little tricks and along the way.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you. So much information. I'm sure Creosa has already tried this out. While you were talking, I have a feeling I'll be asked later, what have you done, Monica? But yeah, thank you all for coming. Look for an email from the Tech Collective with some follow-up materials, as Catherine has mentioned, and we look forward to seeing you at other Tech Collective events and training. Catherine, thank you again for giving of your time, and for APSO for generously allowing you to share with us. And as always, Creosa, thank you for organizing and really getting us some great talent and information to share with our membership. So have a wonderful day. Go out and build a snowman or something really fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.